Hello, this is Partial Hangout here, and in this MP4 file I will be reviewing the indie dungeon crawler roguelike Crypt of the Necrodancer. Now, I want to stress what I'm going to say is my own personal opinion. If you disagree, that is perfectly fine. Let me just be clear though that I don't like this game at all, and I will be explaining why. As I usually do, I will be dividing my review into three main sections: aesthetic, story, and gameplay. I'll start with the story though, because there basically isn't one, which I don't mind at all. It isn't a bad thing. If you like what I put out, a like and subscribe really go a long way. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, leave it in the comments below. But with that said, let's dive right in. So story-wise, you actually do get an opening cutscene showing a young girl digging on top of a mountain, only for where she is standing to collapse. She then falls within the mountain and gets hurt. A sinister-looking monkey afterwards then appears to be doing magic on her heart. The girl talks throughout this cutscene about people not believing in her and how strong she is, and that she's seeking an answer to a certain question. And that's all you get, and you drop right into the gameplay. Throughout your time, you do meet NPCs, but from my experience, they only serve gameplay purposes, not really story ones, where they exposition dump. And by gameplay, I mean like selling you stuff or providing you some type of in-game feature. I haven't beaten the game out, but what I've played, story is definitely not a main factor at all. It's just there to have a foundation for the game world you are in. This is very reminiscent of how retro and arcade games would do stories. Just a basic introductory cutscene or dialogue, and then pretty much nothing else story related until the very end. All the signs are showing for the same type of formula here, which, as I said previously, isn't a bad thing. I play games for the gameplay. If the story isn't good or doesn't exist, I don't care too much. If I want a good story, I'll watch a show. At least that's how I see stories in games. But moving quickly on to the game aesthetics, it's pretty standard pixel art. Nothing wrong with that either. I'm a big fan of pixel art, actually. The game in particular is leaning towards this quaint style of it. Just by looking at the player and enemies, you can tell that the style is meant to be retro, but also kind of kiddish, if that makes any sense. Sort of resembles the old Zelda games from the NES and SNES, and I definitely appreciate that look. But let's get into the meat of the video and the reason why I don't like this game, the gameplay. What I believe to be the most important part of any game. So I don't take it lightly when I don't like a certain gameplay style. So how is the gameplay? Because on the surface, this game might just look like any other dungeon crawler game. Is the gameplay just a copy of how the retro Zelda games work? To that, I say definitely not. Movement works as you'd expect, any direction from a top to bottom angle. However, you might have noticed that a strange counter towards the bottom of the screen exists. This is essentially a pacekeeper. Think of the game floor like a chessboard. Once a beat note is played in the actual song of the level you're in, it will correspond to the two lines meeting each other on the pacemaker. Once the beat lands, you have to move to that exact moment in any direction. In this case, it would be moving to another square. So you can only move to other squares when a beat lands. If you don't move to the beat properly, you risk not being able to move for a short amount of time. Enemies also work the same way and move to the beat. So that's the uniqueness of the game. Everything moves to the beat. So you have to dodge, attack, and explore to said beat. All of which, aside from the movement mechanic, would also work as you'd expect for a dungeon crawler. Get close and the character auto attacks, move to certain squares to avoid enemies, etc, etc. And I don't have a problem with any of this. I actually think this is a real innovative and fun gameplay experience. Moving to the beat and correctly timing dodges and attacks as you make your way through the dungeon feels satisfying. I really don't have any complaints in this department. My issue, as you may have guessed, this, if you've seen my Slay the Spire review, but yes, it's the roguelike mechanics. I'm sorry, but I just don't really like roguelikes. And this game has those mechanics. And let me just get into some more specific details now. You begin in a hub world with 4 zones that need to be completed in ascending order to beat the game. I got stuck on zone 3, but anyways, once you enter a zone, you fight enemies and walk around in the dungeon. Eventually, you may find stairs leading to a lower floor of said dungeon. After you do this, and then again once more, you will end up fighting a boss on the 4th level. The enemies, enemy placement, bosses, loot, and dungeon layout are all random. This alone makes it very frustrating to play, in my opinion. At least for me, I would often die to the game deciding to give me a crappy weapon or a nasty group of enemies, but is there a way to get stronger? Throughout your playtime, you will gather a currency called diamonds. Diamonds can be found in a level floating around to collect ore within walls that the player needs to dig up. Regardless, point is that once you die, and you will have the option to restart the zone or go back to the hub area to use those diamonds. If you don't use those diamonds, you will lose them when you restart the zone. And what do you use the diamonds for, you may ask? Upgrades, weapons, things to make the game easier to play. There's one NPC that can add something to the loot pool, because as you play you will encounter chests and merchants where you can obtain items, and as you may have guessed, the starting items are just okay, right? But you have to keep getting more weapons to just give it more variety and give it more stronger items. Another NPC can give you more permanent health, among some other things. In other words, you're at a serious disadvantage when you first start playing. The game is already hard enough as it is to get used to moving with the beat. That is a rather challenging gameplay mechanic in my opinion, but fun. And now here comes the fact that the player is very ill-equipped to handle enemies without spending those diamonds over time. It is literally better for you to farm diamonds by constantly dying over and over after going through a level or two before even attempting to beat the zone and the boss at the end. I think this is honestly ridiculous. Games should not incentivize dying. You should be better off as you beat more levels, not the other way around. And I just have one word for all this, unfortunately, and that's unfair. Random enemies, merchant items, loot, etc. means that good runs can be influenced by the game instead of the player. What fun is there in getting crappy RNG and then dying for it? It wasn't your fault. Not to mention the game actively wants you to die so you can get stronger in the first place, because you have higher chances of dying than beating the whole zone. And sure, it is possible to be skilled and beat the boss without any additional items. In fact, when you beat a boss, you can use all the diamonds you've accumulated because you can return to the hub after you beat a boss. But that's unrealistic. Not to mention, the boss at the end of the zone is also random. It can be a handful of different options, so if you die to the boss after considerably learning its pattern during that run, good luck when the boss is an entirely different one next time around. If you're playing a game like this for the first time, chances are you will start at a low skill level, and dying due to RNG does not efficiently help you get better, in my opinion. What helps in my view is constantly trying to master one predetermined level with a group of predetermined enemies, learning their pattern, learning the level layout, and just learning and spending time with those enemies to better learn the game. Because if the game throws you off with like, oh, a dragon one level, a little skeleton the next level, it's like you're constantly having to change what you're learning, and it just makes things slower, in my opinion. But one other quick thing to mention is that there is actually an NPC that lets you practice on bosses and levels, but to me, the only reason it exists is to curb the RNG, and I wouldn't need practice mode if there wasn't RNG aspects, which I already don't like in the first place. But yeah, that's really what stinks to me about this game, all the randomness and chaos. And I'm not trying to ruin anybody's fun. If you like the excitement of a random playthrough every time, that's fine. But for me, every time I play this game, it never feels fair because of that randomness. And I did really try to like this game. I never want to regret buying a game. And it just leads me to feel frustrated. So it becomes a challenge to play this game for long periods of time. It's just not for me, I guess. I prefer as much control given to the player as possible, because then I feel like I'm learning from my mistakes when I die. The game should also, of course, not incentivize dying either, but it is what it is. I feel like if the game wasn't a roguelike, but instead a more traditional beginning to end type of game, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. Because like I said, I like the core gameplay, I really do. But that's the end of the review. Again, if you enjoy the video, a like and subscribe would really be greatly appreciated. And comment down below your thoughts. Agree, disagree, did I get anything wrong? With that said, thanks for watching. This is Partial Hangout, signing off.